Hi, and welcome to this episode, which is all about cross-polarization. So, this here is a polarizing filter. So if you look at the side of the camera here, as you rotate, you can see the reflection from the Amaran light here goes off and on, and rotate, back on. So you can see this is a polarizing filter. And these are polarization filters for the lights. And the whole technique, this episode is about cross-polarization and why you'd want to do it. And it's a very straightforward, simple technique in product photography. And I think this expands on hopefully the episodes that have come before on Scheinflug and selective focus and planar focus and focus control, about how you can get things right in camera and save yourself a load of time in post-production, which doesn't need to be done, on very simple techniques, which are analog techniques, because I think this channel really is about analog techniques and how we can use them to our advantage in today's AI and Photoshop society, where in this particular use case, what I'm doing is I have a paperweight. So this is a straightforward paperweight with a map of Europe and Americas on it, I think, and Africa. And how we can get, it's a glass dome, and how we can get rid of, I'll push it that way. So as you can see on the screen, you can see that there's a specular highlight from the aperture light, which I've got above it, lighting the image. Now, basically the technique is that you put one of these large polarizing filters on your light source, on the light, and then you put a straightforward, if I just take this off a second, straightforward polarizing filter on the camera. And then what you do then is you simply rotate. So if you go back to the image on the screen again, you simply rotate the polarizing filter on the camera and you get rid of that highlight, which is obviously incredibly useful to be able to do. And if I do so what I'll do is do it quickly here. I've also put some front tilt on this image just to get stuff in focus. But as you can see, there's text under the highlight. Avril, I presume, is the post stamp for April. And you can see that the specular highlight is going across that. Now, if you had a load of products which you had to photograph, a load of paperweights, for instance, and you needed to, you want to light it this way because it's a really saturated way of lighting, especially this sort of subject. Then you've got this specular highlight on every image. And that would mean you'd have to retouch every single image. But the problem is that underneath that specular highlight is product details. If I go round, you can see it's the word Avril, Avril. And the client wouldn't want that obscured by anything. And you can't retouch it effectively because it's complex. That sort of retouch is, so you know it says Avril, but if you've got that over the top of it, that's a really complex retouch and is very time consuming. it may well be that you'd have to, if you didn't use cross-polarization, you'd have to do 2 images, one showing that, and then you'd have to comp it in Photoshop and retouch and rebuild it. Or possibly AI could do it, but AI doesn't know that that's a V and an R under there. Maybe you could put a prompt in saying, please replace the VR and IL, but then it has to get the right font and it has to look right, so that's not an option. So you would use this cross-polarization technique to solve your problem. And by doing so, you eradicate any retouch completely, and means you can just shoot all the products straight into Capture One or Lightroom or whatever, and you get perfect shots every time. Very cost-effective way of shooting, because you don't have to do the retouch and spend hours and hours in Photoshop. So what we'll do here is just do a quick shot, as we always do. So I'll do a shot with the specular highlights. If we have a look at that, as you can see, you've got the highlights on the going across the word Avril on the paperweight. And if I now do a rotation of the polarization filter on the camera, it'll disappear there. And I go back, do a shot, and now you have the image, if I just zoom into that, as if there's no highlight there. So there's the image in detail, which you can see is quite complex underneath. It's really complex image underneath with the text. So that's with cross-polarization. And without cross-polarization, I think you most surely would agree that actually that's a pretty impossible retouch unless you've had some sort of reference. That's because you just don't know what's underneath it. You can't, to rebuild that would be hours of work, and AI can't really help you with that. So it's best to get it right, as always, in camera, and that's how cross-polarization works in this particular instance, and allows you again to have control. Keep coming back to the control all the time. Control of focus, control of lighting. It's all about control. You're the creative. I've said this before. You're the creative. You want it as you want it. You don't want any AI interpretation. If I was shooting film, it would be exactly the same shot. I wouldn't have to retouch because I couldn't retouch. It'd have to be right on film. And you get a great result every single time. So just to recap, I'm using an Aperture 60D here with the polarizing gel bulldog clipped to the barn doors. Doesn't matter how you put it on because you're rotating the polarizing filter on the camera, and that's where you get the cross polarization. And you can get polarizing gel. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it. Obviously, if you've got a local supplier, try them. It's not expensive, and you can make up. I made these little frames for them, so you get the polarizing gel, and I made up a cardboard frame, double sticked it together, and then that goes on your light source. And you have 2 of them because sometimes you want to cross polarize the light sources as well. And then you're off to the races. Bob's your uncle. You can get some really great shots, some really nice lighting techniques, very, very quickly, very, very simply. So hopefully that's been of use. The episode actually comes out of a question from a viewer, so thank you for that. The viewer asked a question when I did the episode on the RZ67. I mentioned that I'd cross-polarized the light source because we were using a glass specimen bottle, and I wanted to get rid of some highlights on the bottle, so I cross-polarized, and they asked, well, could you expand on that technique? So hopefully, and I said it's a very straightforward technique, which it is, very simple to execute, but hopefully this has been useful to them particularly, and hopefully useful to anybody else as well who is doing some product photography in the studio, or even on location. You take, because I basically take these polarizers wherever I go on a job, because you just never know when you need them. And so I've got an envelope, I put both of them in, and they're in my lighting kit and they're ready to go at any point. Works perfectly well for video as well. So you can and then video is particularly a useful use case, because obviously with video, to try and retouch out something from a specular highlight on video is a real challenge. It's not like a single frame in Photoshop. So yes, you really do. All these techniques can be utilized video and in stills, and are very, very valuable things to have in your toolbox of solutions to problems. So which analog always has been, because back in the film days, didn't have retouch, had to be right in camera, so you had to solve the problem. So hopefully the last few episodes have been useful to people. And if you have any questions, please do ask. Any comments, if you want me to expand on anything, very happy to do so. And hopefully we can explore some other things coming up soon. I think it's going to be rainy the next week or so. I was hoping to get out on the motorbike, but maybe not. Fair weather motorbike rider. And my motorbike has been off the road for the last while, so I did solve an electrical problem, bit of soldering. Yeah, anyway, so you have a good week, and many thanks for your likes and comments. Really appreciate it. Really like the new subscribers. Thanks so much for that. And hopefully you're finding this content useful, which is the whole aim of this. And as always, getting some great comments. The comments down below, people are expanding on the subject I'm talking about, which is fantastic. I'm always learning something new, which is wonderful. Cross polarization is quite a wide area of interest as well. So if anybody has any comments they want to add to this episode, then I know other viewers find the comments useful, and so please do contribute, because it's very much appreciated. So you have a good week, and we'll get together soon. And in the meantime, cheerio.